They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I served mine in paradise and watched it burn everything down. I'm Brian Mackenzie, 38 years old, senior operations manager at a mid-sized logistics company, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had life figured out. The formula seemed simple enough. Work hard, provide well, support your wife's dreams. For 6 years, I'd been the perfect husband by every traditional measure. Reliable income, steady promotions, never missed a mortgage payment. Stephanie and I met at a friend's wedding when I was 32. She was 28, beautiful in that effortless way that made other men stare, charming enough to make my mother love her instantly. We married 18 months later in a ceremony that cost more than my car, but I didn't mind. She deserved the fairy tale, and I could provide it. Our house sits in Meadowbrook Estates, a gated community where the lawns are always perfect, and the neighbors wave politely from their drive-aves. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, granite countertops, and a mortgage that keeps me working 50-hour weeks. Stephanie calls it our sanctuary, though she's the only one who gets to enjoy it during daylight hours. For 6 years, I've funded what she calls her journey of self-discovery. First, it was art classes, oil painting, then watercolors, then photography. Each phase required expensive equipment and supplies that gathered dust once the novelty wore off. Then came the yoga instructor certification she never used, followed by the interior design course that led nowhere. Currently, she's exploring her creative side through what appears to be an endless series of coffee dates, shopping trips, and spa appointments. I never minded. I believed in supporting your spouse's dreams, even when those dreams seemed to change weekly. While I spent my days managing supply chains and dealing with client complaints, Stephanie created what she called a beautiful home. In practice, this meant hiring cleaning services, landscapers, and contractors for every minor repair while she focused on aesthetic vision. Children remained perpetually on the horizon. "Not yet," she'd say whenever I brought it up. "I'm not ready. I need to focus on myself first." After 6 years of marriage, she was still finding herself, while I worked extra hours to pay for gym memberships she used twice a week, nail appointments every 10 days, and endless brunches with friends who seemed to share her talent for avoiding actual responsibilities. But lately, something had shifted. Stephanie's perpetual dissatisfaction, which I'd learned to tune out like background noise, had evolved into something sharper, more urgent. She was stressed, despite having no job, bored, despite having complete freedom to pursue any interest she wanted. The complaints that once felt manageable now carried an edge of accusation, as if her unhappiness was somehow my fault. I started noticing small things. How she angled her phone away when texting, fingers moving with the quick rhythm of intimate conversation. How she came home from errands, smelling like cologne I didn't wear, a scent I couldn't identify, but that lingered in our entryway long after she'd gone upstairs to shower. How she'd lost interest in our marriage while becoming increasingly invested in her appearance. Spending hours getting ready for simple trips to the grocery store. She bought new lingerie but never wore it for me. She scheduled mysterious appointments that ran longer than expected. She developed sudden interests in activities that required her to be away from home for hours at a time. When I asked about her day, her answers became vague, rehearsed, sprinkled with details that didn't quite add up. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was my wife. I was providing everything she'd asked for: financial security, freedom from responsibility, support for every whim. But deep in that place men don't like to admit exists, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. I just didn't know what yet. The worst part wasn't the growing suspicion. It was the creeping realization that I'd become a walking ATM, appreciated for what I provided, not who I was. Stephanie would light up when I mentioned a bonus or promotion, but her eyes glazed over when I talked about my actual work. She remembered every shopping trip she wanted to take, but forgot when I mentioned feeling overwhelmed by increased responsibilities at the office. Last Tuesday, I came home after a particularly brutal day, a major client threatening to walk, 3 subordinates calling in sick, and a presentation due the next morning. I walked through our front door hoping for connection. Maybe some acknowledgement that I was carrying the weight of our entire lifestyle on my shoulders. Stephanie barely looked up from her phone as I set down my briefcase. Her thumbs moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, and for just a moment, her face held an expression I'd never seen before. Secretive, almost giddy. "How was your day?" I asked, loosening my tie. "Fine," she replied without lifting her eyes. "Oh, I might plan something fun with the girls soon. You know how I've been feeling lately." I didn't know it then, but that phone she was clutching like a lifeline, it was the door to a whole other life, one where I didn't exist except as a funding source. Tuesday evening arrived with manufactured enthusiasm radiating from every corner of our house. Stephanie was practically vibrating with excitement when I walked through the door, her energy so artificially bright it felt like staring into a fluorescent bulb. She'd prepared my favorite dinner, grilled salmon with asparagus, and opened a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's daily wages. "I have amazing news," she announced, before I'd even set down my keys. "Melissa and Jennifer want to do a girls' trip to Cancun next week. 7 days, all-inclusive at one of those luxury resorts. We need to decompress, you know? Remember who we are outside of our daily routines." The performance was flawless, except for one crucial detail. Stephanie couldn't meet my eyes. Her gaze danced around the room, the wine glass, her manicured nails, the wall behind my head, anywhere but direct contact. When she did look at me, there was a flush in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the wine, and her voice carried that rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this speech in the mirror. "It sounds wonderful," I said, cutting into my salmon. "When would you leave?" "Next Friday," she answered quickly. "I know it's short notice, but Jennifer found this incredible deal that expires soon. The resort usually costs twice what we'd pay." She laughed, but the sound came out strained. "I'll need about $5,000 for spending money. You know how expensive everything is at those places. $5,000 with 10 days' notice for a trip with 2 friends I'd barely heard her mention in months." I chewed slowly, watching her fidget with her wedding ring, a tell she'd had since we were dating. When Stephanie was nervous about something, she twisted that ring until the diamond faced inward. "Of course, honey," I said finally. "You deserve a break. You've been so stressed lately." Relief flooded her features so completely that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because in that moment, watching her shoulders relax and her smile become genuine for the first time in weeks, I knew with absolute certainty that my wife was lying to me, but I played along. Supportive husband, understanding partner. I asked about the resort, nodded when she described the spa treatments and excursions they'd planned, even suggested she buy some new clothes for the trip. The conversation felt like theater, both of us delivering lines for an audience of one. That night, while Stephanie slept beside me with the peaceful expression of someone whose burden had been lifted, I began digging. Our joint credit card statements painted a devastating picture once I knew what to look for. Hotel charges in our own city on days she'd claimed to be shopping with friends. Romantic dinners for 2 at restaurants I'd never been to, charged during times I was working late. Suspicious purchases at lingerie stores, items I'd never seen her wear. Then I found it. A charge at Premier Travel for 2 tickets to Cancun. Not 3, 2. The rabbit hole deepened as I used our shared computer, her first critical mistake. Hidden in her browser history, I discovered the booking confirmation for Mr. and Mrs. Thompson at Playa Secreto, an adults-only couples resort. A few minutes of research revealed David Thompson, 36 years old, married with 2 children, pharmaceutical sales representative for a major company. His Facebook profile was a monument to family values, vacation photos with his wife and kids, anniversary posts declaring eternal love, proud father moments at school events. I scrolled through months of posts until I found it. A community charity event from 8 months ago. There, barely visible in the background of a group photo, was Stephanie in deep conversation with a man who matched David's description perfectly. Her body language spoke volumes, leaning in, touching his arm, the same secretive smile she'd worn while texting. My hands shook as I screenshot everything, every receipt, every charge, every piece of evidence. But my mind stayed ice cold and calculating. This wasn't just betrayal. It was systematic deception funded by my own salary. While I worked overtime to pay for her self-discovery, she'd been discovering another man. I could have confronted her immediately, could have thrown the evidence in her face and demanded explanations. But something deeper was taking hold, a need for consequences that matched the scope of the betrayal. Instead, I did something that would change everything. I found Monica Thompson on Facebook and sent her a message. "You don't know me, but I believe my wife Stephanie and your husband David are having an affair. I have proof. We need to talk," Monica Thompson replied in 15 minutes. I expected anger, maybe denial, demands for evidence. What I got was something far more dangerous. "Meet me tomorrow at Starbucks on 5th Street. 2 p.m. Don't tell anyone." Cold, calculated fury that matched my own perfectly. I had found a partner in this devastating discovery, and together, we were going to make this betrayal hurt exactly as much as it should. The Starbucks on 5th Street felt like neutral ground for a conversation that could destroy two families. Monica Thompson arrived exactly on time, looking exhausted but composed, her professional armor firmly in place. She wore her wedding ring, I noticed, because I was still wearing mine, but her eyes held the hollow look of someone who'd been questioning everything for longer than she cared to admit. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. The moment she sat down across from me, she said simply, "Show me." I opened my laptop and walked her through everything. Hotel charges that coincided with David's supposed business trips. The Cancun booking under false names. The timeline of deception that stretched back 8 months, longer than I'd initially suspected. With each piece of evidence, Monica's hands trembled slightly, but her expression grew harder, more resolute. "I knew," she said when I finished. "I've known something was wrong for months. Late nights that didn't match his calendar. Shirts that smelled like perfume I don't wear. Deleted text messages. The way he started showering immediately when he came home. Like he was washing something off." She paused, staring at the screen. "My children keep asking why Daddy doesn't want to play with them anymore. He's been emotionally absent for months." "What do you want to do about it?" I asked. Something fierce and unforgiving flickered in her eyes. "I want to ruin their vacation, and I want to make it hurt." Over the next week, we met 3 more times, planning with military precision. Every detail was considered, every angle covered. Monica worked in corporate finance. She understood money, leverage, and strategic timing better than most. I brought operational planning and a coldly logical approach to problem solving that my job demanded. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Let them go, let them get comfortable, let them think they'd gotten away with it. Then on day 3 of their romantic getaway, pull the rug out completely. "Why day 3? Monica asked during our second meeting. "Psychological impact," I explained. "Day 1, they're nervous watching for problems. Day 2, they start to relax. Day 3, they're fully immersed in their fantasy. That's when we want them to realize it's all crashing down." The plan unfolded in carefully orchestrated stages. First, I quietly moved money from our joint accounts to a personal account in only my name, leaving exactly $500, enough to avoid legal complications, not enough to sustain Stephanie's lifestyle. Monica did the same with their shared finances. Next, we both reported our credit cards as lost or stolen, ensuring immediate cancellation with replacement cards sent to home addresses our spouses couldn't access. The timing had to be perfect, close enough to their departure that they wouldn't notice, but executed while they were already in Cancun and helpless to fix it. While they were packing for paradise, I was packing everything Stephanie owned. Every dress, every pair of shoes, every piece of jewelry, every toiletry. I worked with methodical efficiency, folding her life into boxes with the same attention to detail I brought to logistics projects at work. I arranged for everything to be delivered to her parents' house the day after she left for Cancun. Monica executed an identical plan with David's belongings, shipping everything to his brother's apartment across town. We both changed the locks on our homes and had divorce papers prepared by attorneys who specialized in adultery cases, lawyers who assured us that photographic evidence of affairs in luxury resorts would make these proceedings refreshingly straightforward. "You're calmer than I expected," Monica observed during our final planning meeting, studying me across the coffee shop table. "I've had time to process the anger," I said. "It's still there, burning underneath everything else." But anger without strategy is just noise. I want this to be permanent. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. She nodded slowly. David thinks he's so clever. Thinks I'm too focused on the children to notice his behavior. He has no idea what's coming. We synchronized our watches like soldiers preparing for battle and exchanged secure contact information. Two betrayed spouses about to unleash coordinated devastation on two people who thought they were smart enough to get away with systematic deception. Any second thoughts? Monica asked as we prepared to leave. I thought about 6 years of marriage, of supporting dreams that turned out to be covers for an affair, of working overtime to fund my wife's betrayal. None whatsoever, I replied. The pieces were in position. Friday morning arrived with Stephanie practically bouncing with excitement as her Uber pulled up to take her to the airport. She kissed me goodbye with lips that had been kissing another man for 8 months. Her suitcase full of lingerie I'd never seen. As I watched her leave, I texted Monica. Stephanie just left. She replied instantly, David's flight in 2 hours. See you on the other side. I went to work that day. Normal routine, normal schedule. I wanted an alibi for everything that was about to happen. In 72 hours, their paradise would become a prison, and I wanted to make sure I was exactly where I was supposed to be when their world collapsed. Days 1 and 2 of their Cancun getaway passed in excruciating patience. I maintained perfect normalcy, arriving at the office on time, attending meetings, responding to emails with my usual efficiency. But underneath the veneer of routine, I was monitoring everything. Stephanie had created a private Instagram story she thought I couldn't see. She'd forgotten I'd known her password for years, a detail that now served my purposes perfectly. The photos streamed in like evidence for a trial. Stephanie in designer bikinis on pristine beaches, kissing David by an infinity pool, sharing romantic dinners at restaurants that cost more than most people's weekly salaries, couples massages at a spa that marketed itself as intimate healing for soulmates, sunset walks along shorelines she was supposed to be, walking with girlfriends. Each image was a knife twisting in wounds that hadn't finished bleeding, but I screenshot every single one and forwarded them to Monica. She returned the favor with photos from David's secret Instagram account, images of the same moments from his perspective, captions about finally finding real love and deserving happiness. The evidence piled up like ammunition in an arsenal I'd never wanted to build. Tuesday morning, Cancun time, day 3. The psychological sweet spot where their guard would be completely down. Monica and I coordinated via text message. Execute now. We moved simultaneously across different time zones. Credit cards reported lost and stolen to multiple financial institutions. Joint bank accounts emptied except for token amounts that would keep us legally clear. I sat in my office making these calls between meetings, my voice steady and professional as I explained to customer service representatives that yes, I needed immediate cancellation, and yes, I was certain about the security protocols. Meanwhile, 1,500 miles south, Stephanie and David were waking up in their couples-only paradise, planning a snorkeling excursion that would cost them money they no longer had access to. They had no idea their entire financial infrastructure had just been systematically demolished. At the resort concierge desk, David's American Express declined. Then his Visa, then his MasterCard. The polite young woman behind the counter maintained her professional smile as she suggested he contact his bank. Perhaps there was a travel hold that needed to be removed. Stephanie tried her cards next. Same result. Declined, declined, declined. Panic crept into their voices as they called financial institutions from the resort lobby, getting automated messages about lost or stolen cards and security procedures that required in-person verification. They tried calling their spouses for help. My phone rang 3 times before I decided to answer. Monica was letting David's calls go straight to voicemail while she blocked his number permanently. Brian! Stephanie's voice was shrill with panic. Thank God you answered. Something's wrong with the cards. They're all being declined and the banks are saying they're reported stolen. But that's impossible because I have them right here. Can you call them? Maybe it's some kind of mistake. I let her spiral through increasingly desperate explanations before I responded. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke with devastating calm. "It's not a mistake, Stephanie," I said. Silence. Then, "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean, I know where you are. I know who you're with. I know about David Thompson, about the 8 months of lying, about the couple's only resort, about the fake girls' trip. I know everything," I explained. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Brian, I can explain," she started. "No need to explain," I interrupted. "Your belongings are packed and being delivered to your parents' house as we speak. I've filed for divorce. The cards are canceled because they're my cards, in my name, linked to accounts you no longer have access to. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. You can't do this. Where am I supposed to go when I get back?" she demanded. "That's not my problem anymore. Maybe David will take care of you. Oh, wait, his wife Monica is doing exactly the same thing to him right now. So you're both broke and homeless in paradise. Have fun figuring that out," I replied. I hung up and immediately blocked her number, her email, and every social media platform where she might try to reach me. Then I texted Monica. "It's done." Her reply came instantly. "Same here. David just called screaming about how I'm destroying our family. I told him he destroyed it 8 months ago and hung up. Want to get a drink tonight to celebrate?" "Actually, yes. I think we've earned it," I responded. In Cancun, Stephanie and David were discovering that paradise could become a prison faster than they'd imagined. 3 more days stretched ahead of them with no money for activities, no credit cards for purchases beyond the all-inclusive basics, no way to book excursions or even change their flights without paying fees they couldn't afford. They tried calling family members for emergency assistance, but Monica and I had already contacted them. Stephanie's parents refused to help after I showed them the evidence of her affair. David's brother wouldn't answer his phone after Monica had sent him screenshots of the Instagram posts and explained exactly why David needed help, the romantic escape that was supposed to represent their freedom from mundane reality became a claustrophobic nightmare where reality was all they could think about. The resort that had marketed itself as an intimate paradise for lovers became a gorgeous prison where they were trapped with their guilt and each other. By day 5, they were arguing constantly whose fault this was, who was going to fix it, how they could have been so stupid as to not see this coming. The relationship that had seemed worth destroying 2 marriages for was imploding under the weight of actual consequences. When their plane finally landed at home, Stephanie and David returned to nothing. Turns out burning down your life for temporary thrills doesn't just leave you with ashes. It leaves you with debt, shame, and the realization that the person you destroyed your marriage for isn't who you thought they were. When the fantasy ends and reality comes knocking, and reality was waiting. At every locked door they tried to open. Stephanie arrived at our house, my house, to find changed locks and a reality she wasn't prepared to face. The note taped to the front door was brief and legally precise. "Divorce papers have been filed with Hartwell County Superior Court. All future communication must go through my attorney, James Baker at Baker & Associates. Do not attempt to enter this property or contact me directly, as doing so will constitute trespassing and harassment under state law." She called my phone 17 times from the driveway. I watched through the upstairs window as she pounded on the door, tried the garage code that no longer worked, even attempted to climb the fence to the backyard. Each failed attempt was another nail in the coffin of her old life. When the futility became undeniable, she drove to her parents' house in the neighboring town. Her father met her at the door with cold finality that surprised even me when her mother called to tell me about it later. "You're not welcome here, Stephanie," he'd said. "We raised you better than this. You destroyed your marriage for some married man with children. That's not who we thought you were." The door had closed in her face while neighbors watched from their own driveways. David faced identical rejection across town. Monica had executed her plan with surgical precision. Locks changed, belongings shipped, divorce papers filed. His children wouldn't speak to him because Monica had told them the truth in age-appropriate terms. Daddy chose to live somewhere else because he was spending time with another lady instead of taking care of our family. His brother refused to house him after seeing the evidence Monica provided. His parents expressed disappointment so profound that David stopped trying to explain himself. Within a week, Both Stephanie and David were living in extended-stay motels on opposite sides of town, burning through emergency savings that wouldn't last long. The divorces proceeded with brutal efficiency. I'd chosen my attorney well. James Baker specialized in adultery cases and had decades of experience turning cheating spouses' own evidence against them. Stephanie's Instagram posts from Cancun became court exhibits. The hotel receipts and credit card statements painted an undeniable picture of systematic deception. The settlement was everything I'd hoped for. Stephanie received minimal assets, just enough to avoid appearing vindictive to the judge, and no alimony whatsoever due to her adultery. She'd contributed nothing financially to our marriage and had forfeited any claim to support through her behavior. The house, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio, all mine. Monica's divorce moved just as swiftly. David lost half his retirement savings, faced substantial child support payments, and received limited visitation rights under supervised conditions. His pharmaceutical company quietly transferred him to a less desirable territory after the scandal rippled through his professional network. Clients, it turned out, weren't comfortable working with sales representatives who couldn't be trusted in their personal lives. Monica and I met for coffee a few weeks after the divorces were finalized, comparing notes and sharing the dark humor that had sustained us through months of legal proceedings. "David spent 8 months sneaking around with your wife," Monica observed. "Thousands of dollars on hotels and secret dates. And what did he get for it? 7 days in Cancun where they spent most of the time panicking about money, followed by losing everything he'd worked for his entire adult life." I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in months. Stephanie risked everything for excitement and adventure. Now she's 34 years old, working retail at a department store, living in her college friend's spare bedroom because her own parents won't take her in. "Was it worth it?" Monica asked. "Destroying their lives for revenge?" "For them? Apparently it was worth the risk," I said. "For us? Absolutely. We're free." We clinked our coffee cups. A toast to freedom, to justice served, to lives rebuilt from the wreckage of betrayal. 3 months after Cancun, Stephanie and David tried to make their relationship work. After all, they'd destroyed everything for each other. It lasted exactly 7 weeks. Turns out affairs built on lies and stolen moments don't survive when there's nothing left to steal and nowhere to hide. 1 year after the Cancun catastrophe, I'm thriving in ways I never expected when I was funding someone else's deception. The promotion to Regional Operations Director came through 6 months ago. All those nights, Stephanie claimed to be stressed at home, while I worked late had become opportunities to take on additional projects and prove my value to senior management. My dedication, previously taken for granted and exploited, was finally recognized and rewarded with a 30% salary increase. I'm dating casually now, in no rush for anything serious. I've traveled to Iceland, Ireland, and Japan. Places Stephanie always dismissed as too cold, too boring, or not luxurious enough. I've taken up photography and rock climbing, hobbies I'd abandoned to fund her endless search for herself. Most importantly, I wake up every morning without the crushing weight of a lying spouse, without having to perform happiness while funding my own betrayal. Through mutual acquaintances in our small community, news of Stephanie's continued struggles filters back to me occasionally. She and David attempted to build a real relationship after destroying their marriages for each other, but it imploded within 2 months. Relationships built on deception and stolen moments, it turns out, don't translate well to actual partnership when faced with mundane realities like split rent, grocery bills, and social consequences. David's financial devastation proved more severe than even Monica and I had anticipated. Child support and alimony payments consumed 60% of his reduced income. His pharmaceutical company's lateral transfer was actually a demotion to a territory nobody wanted, covering rural towns with doctors who remembered the scandal. His relationship with his children remains damaged. Perhaps permanently, trust, once broken with kids, becomes nearly impossible to rebuild. Stephanie's situation is equally harsh, but somehow more fitting. At 34, she's working 2 part-time jobs, retail at a discount clothing store and food service at a chain restaurant, just to cover basic living expenses. She shares a modest apartment with a roommate and drives a used car with persistent mechanical problems. Her former social circle evaporated after the scandal. Turns out friends who bonded over expensive brunches and shopping trips have little interest in supporting someone who can no longer participate in that lifestyle. She attempted to reach out once, 8 months after the divorce was finalized. A long, rambling email arrived in my spam folder. Apparently, she'd been blocked so thoroughly that even her attempts at contact couldn't reach me directly. The subject line read, "Please let me explain," and the first paragraph was full of words like confused, mistake, and if we could just talk. I deleted it without reading past the opening lines. Some bridges, once burned completely, should stay that way. Monica and I remain genuinely close friends, built on mutual respect and shared experience rather than the shared trauma that brought us together. We supported each other through the legal proceedings, celebrated our respective victories, and gradually built something authentic from the ashes of betrayal. We're not romantically involved. Neither of us is ready for that level of vulnerability, but we're there for each other in ways that matter. Over dinner last week, Monica reflected on the entire experience. "I spent 10 years married to David, 10 years building a life, raising children, supporting his career. And he threw it all away for someone he barely knew for 8 months. Same with Stephanie." I agreed. 6 years of marriage. I thought we were building towards something permanent, but she was just bored and looking for excitement. "Their loss," Monica said, raising her wine glass. "Absolutely their loss," I replied. "The best revenge. I learned isn't violence or public humiliation, it's the cold, calculated removal of support and protection, then stepping back to let natural consequences unfold." Stephanie and David destroyed their marriages, their reputations, their financial security, and their futures for 7 days in paradise that became a nightmare. I destroyed nothing. I simply stopped providing for someone who didn't deserve my provision, and in doing so, I set myself free. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.